Thank you, everyone. I would like to call to order tonight's meeting of the Milton Select Board, Tuesday, July 14th at 7 p.m. And I'll ask you all to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I'll open it up for public comments. I have 21 minutes of public comments. I have 3 minutes individually. I think I saw one name on our in-person, Mr. Joe Byron from the Joyce. I will let you know when you have a minute left, sir.
Minute left? I'll make it quicker than that.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Byron, president of Milton Firefighters Local 1116. Before I begin, I just want the record to show that it's been exactly 380 days since our CBA expired. And I believe that we've been more than accommodating in moving the proverbial needle. I'm here on behalf of the firefighters of the Milton Fire Department because no one is a bigger advocate for them and their families than me. I'm here tonight to talk to you about something that doesn't show up on a budget line item, but it should weigh on every decision you make about your Milton firefighters, what it costs us as human beings to do this job. When the emergency tone drops in the fire station, we don't know what we're walking into. Sometimes it's a car wrapped around a tree, sometimes it's a family pulled from a burning home, sometimes it's a call involving someone who has harmed themselves, a scene no person should ever witness, let alone carry home with them. We see things that stay with us, images that don't leave when the shift ends. We carry them in the apparatus bay, at the dinner table, in the middle of the night when we can't sleep. And it's not just what we witness. Cancer rates in the fire service are rising at an alarming pace, tied directly to the toxins we absorb scene after scene. That's a threat to our health, and it's a threat to our family's financial future. Because none of us have the privilege of knowing whether we'll make it home the next morning, or whether our families will be provided for if we don't. And yet, after that, the most difficult calls, we show up to the next one with the same respect and professionalism that our Milton residents deserve at their most vulnerable and frightening moments. We do this because we chose to serve this town, but that choice comes with a weight, and that weight doesn't go away because our shift ended. That's why financial security isn't a luxury for your Milton firefighters, it's a necessity. When a firefighter is worried about making rents, affording therapy, providing for their kids, or what happens to their family if this job cuts their legs short, that stress compounds every trauma we already carry. But this isn't only about dollars. It's about feeling valued and respected by the town we serve and the leadership that manages it. Knowing that the people we protect see what this job takes from us and stand behind us because of it. You cannot ask us to be strong for this town and then leave us financially fragile and feeling forgotten. Supporting our firefighters, respect what we carry, and by doing that, you support the families waiting for us at home and the families we may leave behind. In closing, I want to say this directly to the members of this board and to our town administrator. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, hug your spouse, kiss your kids, sit at your tables, and be present. Because in this line of work, some of us don't always get that chance again. We ask you to remember that when you decide what your Milton firefighters are worth. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone online. I don't believe we have anyone else in person.
Thank you.
With that, I will move to close public comments. Next for discussion, Town Council, Mr. Darren Klein, Law, join us.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to see everyone.
So I think this is to continue or to add some light and context to a conversation that happened at town meeting regarding personnel board.
Exactly. So I wanted to kind of give an overview, sort of a summary of what your pretty long personnel bylaw provides. Also, what the Town Administrator Act provides in regard to sort of the personnel issues. And then we can have a discussion sort of where there may be some inconsistencies and potential things that could be further cleared up, either through a bylaw amendment, potentially, some ways to maybe clarify the special act a bit, and really what direction the town wants to go in. So, obviously, you have the Town Administrator Special Act along with the Personnel Bylaw that provides sort of various authorities and responsibilities in regards to the town's personnel administration. The problem, as we talked about, is the documents are not entirely consistent with each other, sometimes maybe even overlapping in ways that cause some confusion. And even, what you want to avoid happening, and to my knowledge hasn't happened yet, is you run into a situation where the town does take some action, personnel action, which can have a lot of different repercussions, and an argument come up that whoever took that action didn't necessarily have the authority or didn't go through a procedure that may or may not be applicable or mandatory in the personnel bylaw. We like to, I always say, doing this for 33 years, is I see many more cases that win or lose because the proper process was followed than because the town did the wrong thing. Like, you do have those occasional cases where maybe the town didn't act properly. I don't mean this town, I'm talking any city or town. More often, it's a mistaken process, it's a mistaken due process. So you want to keep those things as easy to follow and clear and concise as possible, because that minimizes the chances for that happening. So the other issue that you have, and it's my understanding that the personnel board has not been filled in 5 years, no?
Several years.
Several years. So that begs the question, well, okay, you have a bylaw that talks about all these different personnel board roles and responsibilities. What does that mean when you have a personnel board? And that would render, I would say, for the most part, many of those provisions to be directory rather than mandatory. But that's my position and opinion. It doesn't mean somebody else couldn't have, fighting the town, or with a different opinion couldn't make an argument that, there's plenty of things that it says the personnel board shall be doing, and they're not doing it because you don't have a personnel board. So what are some ways we could fix that potentially? One obvious way is to fill the personnel board. But I will say, many towns that I've seen over the years have similar bylaws, not exactly the same, but they haven't filled the personnel bylaw for a number of reasons. Like, a lot of these personnel bylaws are pretty old. They go back, 20, 30, 40 years. And let's face it, town, municipal government, especially, human resources, have become much more complex and complicated. And your workforce probably looks very different than it did 25, 30 years ago. So is it feasible to have a board of volunteers, not elected officials, but of volunteers, contribute in a significant, meaningful, and legally effective way, meeting for 2 to 3 hours a month, when you have HR and personnel needs that need to be met on a daily basis? It's become a big part. And, Milton is luckier than a lot of other places because you actually have a full-time HR person in addition to, with the town administrator and the assistant town administrator too. So a lot of places don't have that. So is the model of the personnel board even one that you want? Is it in the best interest? Is that an effective way to deliver personnel and human resources? In a lot of places, you're not the only town that has a personnel board, but it hasn't been filled in a long time. I've seen other places that haven't been filled in 10, 20 years, and they eventually cleaned up their bylaws and special act. And they tried to, in some of these places, they tried to fill positions and fill the personnel board, and they just couldn't get people that were willing to do it. So I will note before I summarize sort of the bylaw for you. Sections 108 and 108C of 41, which is what authorizes the town to have a wage and classification plan and a personnel bylaw. One thing that should be clear, it does not require that there be a personnel board. It provides an option. The town may, through a bylaw, which you have done, provide for a personnel board, but the laws that allow you to have a personnel bylaw and allow you to have a wage and classification plan, they do not require the town to have a personnel board. It gives you the option to have it. So summarizing, and I'm gonna try to move through this pretty quickly while hitting on the key points. What your personnel bylaw provides in summary is that it applies to all town departments and positions except for the salaries of elected officials. School positions are excluded from the personnel bylaw, and all laws, including the Town Administrator Act, and union collective bargaining agreements, which supersede any conflicting provision of the personnel bylaw. So your personnel bylaw says A, B, and C. Your police union collective bargaining agreement says D, E, and F. D, E, and F will prevail over anything in conflict under the personnel bylaw. It provides for a personnel board of 5 members who will be appointed by the moderator for a term of 5 years. Obviously, currently you don't have any appointed. It provides that the personnel board and the town administrator shall administer the personnel bylaw and determine, among other things, equitable rates of compensation. It says that the personnel board shall from time to time establish rules for the administration of the plan, which shall include specifications for minimum requirements of every classified position. It shall from time to time review job classifications and job descriptions covered by the plan and the salary schedules provided in the plan. And the reason I sort of include that is that something you think should be done, again, by an appointed personnel board meeting a couple of times a month, maybe not even that often, or obviously your administrative team that you've hired, you know, to run the town. And there's also, we'll get into sort of what the town administrator's authority personnel-wise is under the Town Administrator Act. It states that the wage classification and compensation plan shall not be amended except at the annual town meeting, but the personnel board, upon the recommendation of the town administrator and appointing authority, may add, abolish, or reclassify positions in the plan and change salary rates. All such actions would be effective until the final adjournment of the next town meeting. Why that's important is you decide in the middle of the year that you really need a new position, or you can't hire somebody into a position at your rates, and you deem it to be such an important position that you have the appropriation to offer more. You can make those changes to the classification plan, the wage plan, but then it needs to be ratified and amended properly before the end of your next annual town meeting, not special town meeting. So again, in August, you decide you need to hire somebody at a different rate, or you need a new position, or you're changing a position. You no longer need this title and want a new title. It gives, right now, the way it's stated, it gives the personnel board, upon the recommendation of the town administrator, to add those positions, and those would be effective until formal, amendments are made to make that part of the wage and classification plan the next town meeting. Now again, I think this is one of those provisions that causes some confusion because it probably has been done in practice by the town administrator or the appointing authority, and the town administrator is the appointing authority for many of the positions. And I think that's probably the way most cities and towns intended to act. Like the personnel board should be advisory, but it shouldn't take the decision. Like things still need to move quicker than that usually, right? Like if we need to make a decision, the personnel board may not be meeting for a few weeks. So again, is that the best way to sort of run these things? And that's a decision for the town to make. The personnel board shall maintain the employee classification and salary schedules, again, subject to the collective bargaining agreements, which shall take precedence. The personnel board is authorized to advise the town administrator during collective bargaining planning process, which shall not participate in those bargaining sessions. The select board shall establish and periodically review affirmative action and equal employment goals and guidelines for the town, while the personnel board, with the cooperation of the town administrator, shall monitor and strive for diversity in the town workforce. I think everyone agrees with the second part of that, but now you have sort of 3 different potential agencies, setting these policies and trying to establish these protocols. It's just so that's, that can slow things down. The personnel board shall report annually in writing to the town prior to the annual town meeting on the classification and salary schedules and the efforts of the town to achieve the goals of this chapter. And then it says, notwithstanding any other provisions, the town administrator shall be entrusted with the administration of the town's personnel system, which shall include but not be limited to personnel bylaws, personnel policies and practices, rules and regulations, annual employee performance review of the CBA. Now, again, that provision is a little bit more consistent with your Town Administrator Act, but I would argue maybe a little inconsistent with some of the other provisions I just sort of summarized and ran through. It does say the town administrator shall appoint, supervise, and direct all department heads and town employees, except for the consolidated facilities director, who are under the jurisdiction of the select board. And the town administrator shall also prepare and keep current a plan establishing the personnel staffing requirements for each department. No person shall be employed in the town unless in the opinion of the town administrator such person meets those requirements. The town administrator and other appointing authorities shall ensure fair treatment of all applicants. And then really just one other provision I want to highlight is it states that the town administrator shall fix the compensation of appointed officers and employees within the limits established by the appropriation of town meeting, including without limitation employees who serve under elected or appointed town boards, commissions, and committees. This is a provision I want to highlight that I do think, no matter what is decided, I think is problematic. In instances where an appointment is recommended to the town administrator by an elected or appointed town board, commission, and committee, such appointment recommendation will only be altered, returned for further consideration, or denied where the town administrator determines that a town personnel policy or practice has not been allowed. That provision is problematic to me, in my opinion, because one, it's I think inconsistent with the town administrator's appointing authority stated in other places, but it's also far too narrow. There might be a number of different reasons the town administrator might select a certain candidate that would be certainly much broader than just the town administrator determining that a town personnel policy or practice has not been followed. So like that's a provision there. I'm guessing that it's really, that provision's probably been in there a while. It needs to be updated at the very least. So without going through every part, it then goes on to talk about, different types of personnel issues and how the plan is maintained, the wage and classification plan is maintained and ultimately amended by town meeting. It does state that the town administrator may start such an employee in a higher step than prescribed when the town administrator concurs with the written opinion of the department head. In special circumstances warrant such action. It does state that the signature of the personnel board chair is required to effectuate such action. I mean, again, I think that's problematic in my opinion, and obviously not the current practice because the personnel board can fit. All right, it does provide for a dispute resolution process, which does keep the final decision with the town administrator. So the Town Administrator Act is a bit more succinct on these issues. It does supersede the bylaw to the extent that there's inconsistencies. It says the town administrator shall supervise, direct, and be responsible for the efficient administration of the town's day-to-day operations. Town administrator shall appoint, supervise, and direct all department heads except for the consolidated facilities director. Town employees who are under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. With respect to department heads only, such appointment shall become effective on the 15th day following the day in which the notice of the appointment is filed with the Board of Selectmen, unless within that 15-day period, the Board of Selectmen by majority vote, the Select Board, I apologize, by majority vote, has voted to reject the appointment or sooner voted to affirm the appointment. So basically, when the department head is appointed, notice goes to the Select Board. They have 15 days to disagree or to overturn basically that recommendation. Otherwise, it becomes effective either at the end of that 15-day period, or if you meet sooner than that and say we confirm the town administrator's appointment. This is with department heads on. It does say that the town administrator may enter into employment contracts with the fire chief, and police chief, and the deputy chief, and the town accountant, and that the town administrator may suspend or remove any person that he or she appoints, and that with respect to any such removal, if that person is a department head, the town administrator shall first inform the Board of Selectmen with respect to that removal. And then it just kind of goes in a bit more succinct way to say the town administrator shall be entrusted with the administration of the town personnel system in conjunction with the personnel board, which shall include but not be limited to personnel policy, practices, rules, and regs, It basically goes through all the different personnel issues. It does say that the town administrator shall fix the compensation of all appointed officers and employees within the limits established by the appropriations of town meeting. So obviously, as I said at the beginning, there's some overlap and some inconsistency between the special act and the bylaws. And, you know, obviously a main decision is, does the town want to have a personnel board? Do they think that's the best move, or something they want to have? Because if that is a decision, and I'm not saying it is, you know, you don't want to just have it unfilled forever, right? You have a personnel board that's presumably supposed to be filled, and that personnel board has been given a bunch of obviously authorities and duties. You know, I do think there's some consistency problems. So, you know, obviously, if the direction is to not have a personnel board, the best thing to do would be to amend your personnel bylaw to obviously centralize those functions with the town administrator's office, make it very consistent with the special act, and obviously, you know, remove the personnel board from the bylaw. I mean, I know in some ideas, you know, you could just go without a personnel board completely if that's the you know, the direction the town wants to go. And another sort of maybe middle ground area is don't have a personnel board, but maybe have like a human resource advisory board. And, you know, that would, I think, obviously, once the bylaw is sort of amended to be consistent, would clarify that, you know, the authority, you know, lies with the town administrator, subject to the limitations in the special act, but there would at least be a human resource advisory board for the town administration to tap into as needed, that could do some of the things that would be helpful, that may be more appropriate for sort of a volunteer appointed board, as opposed to, you know, having real decision-making authority or be part of a process that it may not really realistically line up with your personnel needs now. A couple other sort of thoughts I did have is, my understanding is the way that the special act has been interpreted is that for positions that fall under other elected boards, not the select board, that the town administrator is the appointing authority for the non-department head employees in those departments, but that the department head in those departments would be the appointment of those elected boards. So I have that correct? So, so that could be further clarified. It's a little ambiguous as far as what happens with the employees, not the department head, in those that work under or, you know, in the department in which you have another elected board. So to me, if that's the practice that the town wants, I do think that the special act could be further clarified, just to make sure that there's no, you know, it could just be a little bit clearer, I think, than it currently is. You know, I could certainly make some other suggestions if there's a desire to have the personnel bylaw clarified. I could easily go through. I already have done it to some regard. I do think rather than keep saying that the collective bargaining agreements supersede, I would just exempt employees covered by a collective bargaining agreement. I think it's a much cleaner way to do it, because it does beg the question, like, well, every time we get a new contract, we have to update those pay scales that don't really apply to them anyway. So I just think it's cleaner to just exempt them. You know, and that way you don't have to, their collective bargaining agreement is going to prevail anyway. So rather than say that 3 or 4 times, just exclude them like you do the school employees. Would be a suggestion I have. So that's a lot, I know, to digest. I was trying to give a good enough summary of a 9-page bylaw. So you got the gist of it without, you know, taking 2 hours to go through every sentence. So hopefully I hit some of that.
All right, that is a lot. And I will open it up to the members.
I just want, Darren made a few good points just in terms of the exemption and how collective bargaining agreements trump. And just so the board and anybody listening understands that in Milton, we have mostly all of the employee positions are covered by collective bargaining agreements, because we have the Milton Professional Management Association, which is kind of a catch-all association that captures a wide variety of positions. So in other communities where there might be a large number of non-union employees in the professional roles at the department levels, here in Milton, a lot of the department heads, their assistant department heads, and other positions are also collectively bargained or part of an association. So the number of employees that are truly covered by the personnel plan is much smaller than it might be in other communities. So just another factor, I just wanted to flag that aspect of it, because so many, and like I said, so many positions are covered by collective bargaining.
So we have a larger number of positions that would be limited exemption.
Correct.
Thank you. Questions or thoughts or points from the members?
I think it's, okay.
Go ahead,
No,
ladies
go on, please.
first.
No, please. You
Nick,
Mr.
how long this board has been no members?
I should have gone back and done the homework. It's been a couple of years, I think. I know I met with the former moderator at some point to talk about some recruitment efforts. So it's been, I'd say, a couple of years. I can nail that down a little bit better. I think.
And we've been doing pretty good without it, right? No, I just think there's more committees, it just gets to be, you gotta appoint people, they gotta appoint someone, they gotta meet. In the real world, things move pretty fast, and plus you got a human resource officer, right?
Correct, yeah,
Which you didn't have years ago, right?
correct.
So-
Well, that position's been around for a while, here in Milton, so we've been fortunate for a while.
But we've been kinda going pretty good without this committee.
So during your time, you haven't had it personally.
I believe they've met a few times since I've been here, mostly around establishment of new positions several years ago. That was something that Darren flagged as kind of one of the key roles during the course of the year.
Just piggybacking off what John said, I think it seems like things have been going fine if there's very few people that this is covered by, and to John's point about moving fast, it does seem like we need to be lighter on our feet. Everything moves a little bit faster these days, and if we have to take something to the personnel board, that just might slow down, or we might lose a good candidate. So I think it makes sense to kind of think about whether or not we keep it and update our bylaws.
Member Hagerty online.
I just wanna add that, close to 90% of the town's budget is personnel. And we have a fiduciary responsibility to the town as a select board. And we oversee the town administrator. So I think it, structurally in terms of governance for the town, makes it easier to evaluate the town administrator's performance if he and his human resources department are primarily responsible for making decisions on the posting of positions, et cetera.
Chair.
Through the chair, thank you. The one thing I did forget to say too is, if you follow sort of the natural progression of things, in 2016, when you adopted the Town Administrator Act, it obviously centralized a lot of the functions in the town administrator. If that had been in place first, right, do you think you would have then later adopted the personnel bylaw that you currently have? And I know there were some amendments made to kind of make it more consistent, but I'm not sure if the Town Administrator Act existed first, or you had that form of government, whether you would have you would have done after that fact, said, oh, we need a personnel board. Because it's not the way I've seen things sort of develop in other places. I think the personnel boards mostly were, developed a long time ago and just don't work as well today, but especially where, the town did go through some pretty adopted legislation that really centralized those functions. So does a personnel board make as much sense post 2016 as it did pre 2016? I guess the question to
Are you seeing any trends with other towns to move away or toward, it sounds like not towards more personnel boards, is it?
I do.
Yeah.
I have to say that I'm trying to think of any towns I'm working with that have an active personnel board. I can't think of any that I'm currently working with, and if I'm wrong, if I'm forgetting,
Yeah.
I'm forgetting like one, I'm not forgetting or two. I can think of some that have since adopted legislation that do not have a personnel board. There's one town in particular that, they didn't have a personnel board for years and years and years, and they finally obviously had their, corrected their bylaws, and maybe with special legislation to remove it. So there wasn't sort of, some confusion because it just wasn't active at all. And I will say that place, they just literally couldn't get any. I know another town. They just couldn't get people to fill the positions. It's a hard board to do it right takes a lot of time. And it's a hard board to do 2 hours a month. So you need to find people that really are gonna put in the time. And I don't see it as a common board anymore.
Just one follow-up, well, different question, and this might go to the topic of whether there's any value in something like an HR advisory board if we went away from the personnel board. I'd pose this to you and Nick or Cody. I mean, are there any checks and balances or other benefits to the personnel board that we might miss? I mean, I know it's been vacant, so maybe it's tough to say because they haven't been functioning, but is there anything, a top 2 or 3 things that you guys would suggest that we'd wanna try to salvage from what that sort of advisory group could bring to the table? Let's say if we didn't have such a fantastic town administrator as we do today,
I'll go for it. I guess I kind of look at it in 2 ways. I think if we had more positions that were covered and under the jurisdiction of the personnel plan, then it might be a different answer, but where there are, again, so many of our positions covered by collective bargaining agreement. In terms of advisory role, we're not perfect. We could use in updating to employment policies and other procedures. So I think that leaning on talent in town who want to, understand an advisory role and want to participate in helping, write and draft and approve new personnel policy. I think that is a place where there's expertise in town that we can lean on. And obviously we're always looking to grab that where possible. So I think that would be my perspective on it. I don't know if Darren, if you've seen that part.
I was literally gonna say almost the exact same answer. I think there's value if you get good people, obviously, to helping, with some of those things that are a bit harder to get to maybe in your weekly and daily, all the things that both your offices have. I think where I would really shy away from is having them involved in the personnel decisions or even the setting of salaries, because I just don't know if that's the most effective way. I don't think it is the most common way anymore. And it could, you gave a very good hypothetical. You need to hire somebody. They have 2 other offers. They may not wait for the personnel board to need to confirm the town administrator's recommendation on a change in salary 3 weeks from now. So I think if you're gonna have a board, whether you call it the personnel board or HR advisory board, it should be an advisory board, to give advice on things that maybe the administration is asking for some help and advice in, but not be a decision-making board or even confirming board.
Member Haggard?
Pertaining to the advisory board or any board in general, in my professional experience where I've seen more of these boards deployed, it's been more for the purpose of position control. If there were too much hiring or too much personnel spending. But I would also just like to note that we don't particularly have that problem with this town. Today we discussed some of the FY26 closeout, and we had some turnbacks from, unfilled positions, unbudgeted positions. So we don't, on the town side especially, don't have any overspending pertaining to salaries. I would say if anything, we need positions posted quickly, and we need hires to come in more quickly so that our estimates on spending are more accurate. So I would say that, to Attorney Klein's point, that we definitely wouldn't want to do anything that would cause a slower process.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Okay, for this conversation, what comes to me is that this feels not just about the personnel board, but time for us to maybe revisit and update some of our HR practices, whether it's in light of the new Town Administrator Act, or whether we're just thinking about moving more efficiently for our needs now, and this gives us a chance to revisit that. The personnel board is a feature of the past and no longer serves us, then let's decide if it's the advisory board or if there's another way of infrastructure that actually gets us to faster hiring, more efficient, having the support for the town administrator and the town staff that's necessary, but it doesn't need to be kind of the old way. Particularly the idea that you surfaced there about the department heads and who they report to, whether they're reporting into their elected boards or who's reporting into the TA, and making sure that that's explicit and known, so that if we, perhaps we've been lucky in the last few years, we haven't had any issues that have been elevated and caused any problems. And so now we need to be really efficient and sort of head off any of those issues. So nothing for us to take a motion on, but perhaps the next step is figuring out what we look like without the personnel board, or what structures work best for us now, and taking those next steps.
Yeah, I mean, I think a suggestion, I'm happy to obviously the board's real work on sort of drafting the town administrator's office is doing an amended personnel bylaw that would obviously remove the personnel board and set up, in those situations where it needs to be clarified, sort of provide suggestions for those clarifications, and provide sort of a red line version of the proposed amended personnel bylaw. And I think, Nick and I can work through, what things he's looking for to, what things he thinks would be beneficial to the town, and obviously, go through the bylaw amendment process. I know we have one committee, I forget it. It's escaping me the exact process, but whatever the process is,
We'll
we
do it the right way.
would follow it.
Yeah. Also, this was a question, was it standard practice that the moderator handle the appointments for this personnel board?
It's actually in your bylaw. Oh, is that standard practice in other areas? I've seen, I do recall maybe seeing another personnel bylaw where the town moderator made the appointments, but I think probably just as many would be the select board. There aren't a lot of personnel boards anymore.
Could I just ask one more for action item question? Would that proposed revision, which sounds good, get to the issue we were talking about of really sort of an org chart, structural, I think, critical thinking we need to do, that you kind of mentioned there about, sort of reporting channels and clarity around that? And I mean, it seems like there might be some tricky issues we have to think through there potentially. And I'm not sure whether that draft would get to that, or I'm just thinking of how do we tee that up for
So,
further discussion?
I think the one area to me that was less clear than other areas was the appointing authority for the non-department heads that work in departments where there's another elected board. I think like, I would feel better for the town if that was just further clarified. There's a practice in place, I think it's a good practice, I wouldn't suggest changing it. I just would want to take another look at your special act and bylaw and just see if we can further clarify that. Just to avoid any questions from coming up. That's what jumped out at me, rather than, you know, in relation to what you just asked.
Alright, so you okay with next steps for?
Yeah,
Sort
well,
of collaborate.
I'll get sort of suggestions and proposals, and then obviously you have a process for your warrant articles and your proposed bylaw amendments, and if you follow that process, if it, you know, you follow that process.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Anything else you need from me on him? Great.
Done pretty well.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much, have a
Thanks
good
for
night,
coming out.
try to stay somewhat cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, hot couple of days.
We're going to move to item 5, which is discussion and approval of the reweld agreement, but we're actually going to move that to our next meeting on Tuesday for review. And so with that, we'll move to item 6, our discussion with our town treasurer and collector, Joanna McCarthy.
Okay,
Welcome,
thank you.
for joining us.
All right. I noticed Member Henry is not here tonight. She's participating via Zoom, so she's missing the fun in person, right? Thank you for giving me some time. I know the other department heads have come in here and provided an update, and that's what I'm about to give you from the treasurer collector office. So next got a couple slides here, but I just wanted to quickly touch on a quick overview of the department, a little bit about our org chart, and who is where and what we do. Some recent accomplishments we've had, some current priorities on our plate, the challenges and the opportunities that I see happening right now, and then a little bit of a vision into the future and what I'm looking to do moving forward. So the first thing I have here is a department mission statement that we came up with. You know, largely, I'm not going to read all these slides to you, you guys can read them yourselves, but this is largely just kind of pointing out our fiduciary responsibilities to the financial assets of the town, to the collection and the cash management and the customer service roles that we have, and ultimately our focus being on the residents of the town and the taxpayers of the town. This is a little bit about who you would find if you walk into the treasurer collector's office. So I'm the treasurer collector. I've been here three years, 4 months. And I think you all know prior to that, I don't have specific experience in the municipal world nor the treasurer collector world. So it's been a 3 years and 4 months full of learning lessons and kind of coming up to speed on prior practices and also trying to make some improvements along the way. I do have a manager on the team. She's the assistant treasurer collector. She has been with us for 6 months, and currently she hasn't been doing too much of that management role because she's been filling in as the payroll clerk. We have a vacancy in the payroll clerk position, which you will also see on this org chart. And I'm happy to report that we have a payroll clerk starting next week. So we're thrilled about that, and our manager came back to the assistant treasurer collector role that we hired her for. The other three persons in the department, a deputy collector and 2 senior admin clerks, have various years of tenure with the town, not just in the treasurer collector office, but in other departments as well. Some tenure and senior, seniority in the senior admin roles. They're currently mostly all collections focused and our customer service fronts for any residents or taxpayers who come into the town hall. We're often the first place to stop for a question, so we're like, engineering's upstairs, or dog license in the town clerk's office, so, we're often fielding a lot of, people walking through the door, and that's largely the job of these three individuals, in addition to data processing and, other administrative duties. So the next slide has our core responsibilities on it. I am a treasurer collector, so other municipalities have treasurer collectors, they have a treasurer or they have a collector. In this town, we have them combined, and so both of those functions sit in the office. So the treasurer side of the office, from that vantage point, I, along with the team, manage the cash and investment accounts that we have, in which we hold all of our financial assets. We process receipts turned over from all the town and the school departments. So think about things like building permits. The building department and inspectional services will bring down those receipts to us. Park and rec fees, council on aging class payments, any grant monies we get, state aid, all of that comes into my office. So all of the money comes in that way. The treasurer's side also remits all town payments. So we work closely with the accounting team in doing this, but we remit payments in large part to employees on a biweekly basis. We fund payroll and we process payroll for all town and school employees. And then the other form of payment is to vendors. So anywhere from the copier rentals to large vendor payments for construction that we have going on. All of that comes through my office. And we work, like I said, interconnectedly with the accounting department in facilitating all those payments. The treasurer side of our department also issues the debt. As I think you know, we have a plan to do so in the fall. And thankfully that's not on a very frequent basis, because that does it's time intensive and there's a lot of work associated with that. Again, working closely with other departments in doing so. And then I guess the last thing I'd say on the treasurer side is reporting. We have Department of Revenue reporting, DLS reporting. I will often report in ad hoc ways to Nick, to the Select Board Finance Committee, and I work with the Finance Director on other types of reporting that's necessary. So on the collector side of the house, that's where we're taking in all of those real estate and personal property tax and motor vehicle tax payments. We accept commitments, and what that means is the assessor's office will commit bills to us or commit tax amounts to us to bill. We then print and mail those bills. We don't actually do the printing, we have a printer that does that and does the mailing of that. We then collect and process all the payments that we receive on those bills. And we maintain all the account records and the receivable balances for the accounts. So think tax accounts, but also think utility accounts as well, like water, sewer, trash. And all of these responsibilities, like I said, we have upstream and downstream partners in departments all across the town, heavily, connected with the accounting team, the assessor's office, and the water department largely for those collection outflows or collection flows. So this is a little laundry list of various services we provide. I thought that this would kind of be interesting information. There's a lot of bills that we send out in this town. You might know this because you might get these in the mail from us with frequency. We have about 8,700 real estate tax bills that we mail twice a year. We collect payments quarterly on those. 280 personal property tax bills. Anywhere from 22 to even, I think we've seen closer to 25,000 excise tax bills, and that's for vehicles in town. And the interesting part about that is it says over 7 commitments. Largely, we send, the most of those tax bills go out at the beginning of the year, and those are for any vehicle that's registered in the town as of January 1st, but obviously people buy and sell cars throughout the year. So any new cars that people get and own, or register, I should say, they will get a prorated tax bill from us throughout the year. So we have 7 different kind of cycles in which we send out bills. The office collects all the utility payments for the town. That's water, sewer, stormwater once a year, and trash once a year. We have lots of daily inquiries. I've done a little bit of kind of back of the envelope on this, and it definitely ranges with due dates of bills, but I would say we get about 125 telephone calls a day. We get about 70 people walking in the office, and we have about 40 people emailing the general email account, or me specifically. The next bullet point here is talking about MLC requests. Those are municipal lien certificates. Municipal lien certificates are usually requested when there's a property sale or a transaction or a refinancing that happens through attorneys during those processes. They will request a municipal lien certificate from the town that effectively says taxes are paid, no monies are owed, but it's a legal document that, it's a state form that I sign and then send back to them. It's a process. So it's one of the other ones on there. We sell trash stickers in the office. We make sure that different stores around town have trash stickers available for our residents to purchase there. We do that bi-weekly payroll processing I talked about. So every 2 weeks, about 1,100 town and school employees get a pay direct deposit, and we also coordinate the tax payments and deductions associated with that. Weekly vendor warrant payment issuance, so those are all the payments that we send out to vendors. This could be about 75 to 300 checks a week, or maybe 5 to 10 wires a week. We have custody of some Milton High School scholarship funds, and I just put that on there just to kind of make note of it. We do have $1.5 million in different fund accounts right now for scholarship issuances, and that typically happens in the late spring. And we also provide in the office notary services for the residents of the town. And we do other stuff too. So the next slide I have is recent accomplishments, things that we've done lately. So one is that we converted our collection system for tax accounts. And we were working off of, if you looked at it, you would be like, this is the DOS-based system of, the 1990s, the previous system. So we got off of that, had not a lot of functionality. And we're on a new Windows-based software, and it speaks to and coordinates with our accounting software, and we are able to import payments into it, which is quite nice. And so that was a big lift, and we're still, that was probably 9 months ago, and we're still kind of approaching our first year end with it, and so we'll see how it all shakes out, but I think we're just happy with it overall. We've done a big tax title account collections effort. That's properties that were had a tax lien on them, and they were either in land court for foreclosure, or they were years and years of existing balances were kind of hanging out there, and just wasn't great for the taxpayer because they were sitting out there with a 16% interest rate slapped on it. Wasn't great for us because the cash was not in the town's accounts. So I've done a collections effort there. We've taken in about $3 million of outstanding balances in the last, 24 months. We've migrated to a single banking lockbox, which is a PO box for people to pay their bills, which is quite nice. You send in your remittance copy of a bill, you send in a check, and it goes right to the bank. We'll get a download from the bank of all the accounts paid, and we can pull that right up into our system, which is helping us move towards the future here rather than kind of keying in individual payments. We've put some payment protection safeguards in place to prevent fraud. Mainly with check fraud, we have positive pay verification, but we also have developed, electronic payment policies that are best practices. So when we're wiring funds out of the town, we're doing that appropriately. We scan checks in our office rather than your treasurer heading to the bank every day. we've redesigned the bills to highlight and encourage people to pay online. That's the easiest way to do it. So for anybody listening out there, please utilize that Unipay site. We've been doing some interest rate capturing and account management. So when interest rates are high and when we have various opportunities with various accounts, I will move funds around in order to maximize that to the best of our ability. We even now have a credit card swipe at our office counter. So once people come in and they say, we've traditionally said, oh, cash or check, and they're like, I have a card. We now are able to accept a card in our office. The weird part about the card, just to let everybody here know and everybody in the public know, is that when you use a card at a local store, that store will take on the ownership of the fees associated with using that credit card swipe. The town obviously can't do that, so the town actually will upcharge the payment based on the amount paid, so that the fees are attached to that. So if you come in and buy a $35 sticker, you might have to pay an extra $1.50 fees. But that's what that is. Next slide has our current priorities, so the things I'm working on right now. We're finalizing the fiscal year 26 year end. I think you're gonna talk more about that in a bit. And from my vantage point, that's just ensuring all cash is reported, bank accounts are reconciled. We're onboarding that new payroll clerk, can't wait for her to start next week. We're assuming some of the DPW billing and collection responsibilities, so I'm working on transitioning that up to my office. We're migrating the utility billing software off of that old DOS product onto that new cool Windows-based product. And it's going to be all kind of under the same umbrella of the current collection system, so we have sort of one software provider helping us with this. I'm working with other departments in town to select and implement a new payroll HR software product. Amy spoke a little bit about that when she came and spoke to you a few weeks ago. But that's at the top of many of our lists. And then of course we have the fall debt issuance coming up. And I just want to spend a little bit of time next on some challenges and opportunities that we see in the department right now. So under the challenges column, I'd say staffing and recruitment. I found the prior discussion item very interesting. And let me just say, from a staffing and recruitment perspective, over the 3 years I've been here, we've had some vacancies in my office and in tangential offices around town. And it's difficult to recruit people to come in to the roles that we have and under the positions that we have. So again, my prior experience is all in the private sector, and that was a different beast in its entirety. I work often with our town administrator and our HR director on talking about kind of how we can make these positions more marketable and more attractive to the right people. And we're going to continue to have to do that as we march down the future here and as we see future vacancies in our finance team departments. So it's something it's challenging, but we're working through it. We're doing okay, and like I said, we come out the other side with a payroll clerk next week, so I'm excited about that. We have technology upgrades and needs. I've talked about those already. Those continue to be challenges, and anytime you onboard something, it's there's bugs and there's things to figure out as you're doing that. So it's never a smooth path, but we've made some good progress thus far. I would say that we've got lots of manually intensive work still. There's deposit slips that still exist in my office. There's carbon copies of things. We keep a lot of paper. That's my last one here. There's paper everywhere. I'm just gonna kind of work on thinking about how we can reduce that. We have an archive room down in the lower floor of the town hall that has a lot of documents that need to be retained and archived. But it's just an insane volume of paper that's down there. So we need to think about that. We need to think about that collectively as a town, but I also need to think about that as my department, right? there's a lot of things regarding tax records and payroll records that we need to retain, and we need to think about a way to do that so it's not overwhelming. But all this, like, you know, brings about opportunities. We can streamline some workflows. As we're doing this, we can utilize some technology. And something I'd like to focus on is just public facing enhancements. Lots of people come in with lots of different suggestions at all times, or email, or call us with suggestions, and I really do welcome them. You know, I often will, they will, you know, there will be themes there, and we'll try to implement those as best we can. And I wanna make sure that we're doing that, you know, always with a focus on making it easier for our residents and taxpayers. So looking ahead, I just, on my radar screen, I would say my 12-month radar screen here, continue to maximize collections and our revenue with notices and with demands. Once we get that new payroll system up and running, I'm really looking forward to employee self-service for payroll and benefits. It would be something akin to kind of, you know, changing your direct deposit information yourself, changing your withholding rates yourself, and not having somebody key it. You may review that, and oftentimes needs to be keyed in a couple different places also elsewhere. The third bullet here is bill presentment for residents. So that is where, you know, the actual bill that you receive in the mail would be available to you online. So you'd see the bill rather than just the amount, you know, that is owed, which I think would be very helpful and, you know, when people are requesting payment histories. If you're preparing your taxes in March, and you're trying to go back through the last calendar year, it's, you know, we get a lot of inquiries at that time for, hey, how much did I pay in taxes last year? If we were able to present bills and make them available for our residents online, that would be helpful. I wanna do specifically some cash flow planning. I've talked to Nick about this a lot, that I wanna be thoughtful about. I should say, I wanna do more of it. I do it at a very high level now, but I think the town could really benefit from understanding what we have from cash balances and understanding when we will need to potentially, you know, do short-term borrowings to cover us through a long-term debt issuance, or if we have enough funds to get us through, you know, a certain period of time with some visibility into interest rates as well, and really trying to maximize the amount of money we can make and hold at one point in time. So capture interest rate opportunities is always up there. And then, you know, just finally from an employee standpoint, I'd love to cross-train throughout my department, make sure that time offs, you know, time away from the desk is covered, and help to develop skills through training. The role that I have has a great, you know, peer association, Massachusetts Collector Treasurer Association, has lots of classes and has a treasurer school I'm gonna go to in a couple weeks. Just what you wanna do in the middle of August. So there's lots of learning opportunities, and I'd love to like promulgate that throughout the department and ensure that, you know, that everybody is well trained and well versed on new Mass General laws or, you know, new industry guidance. Okay, that was a lot. What can I answer for you? Questions and discussion. How can I help?
Nick, anything you would add, any color?
Nope, very grateful for the work that Joanna does, and grateful that she called that random day 3 or 4 years ago to say, what is the role of the treasurer? And I might be interested in potentially running for that office. So, no, the town's been fortunate, we've been fortunate to have it, so that's all.
Thank you. Member Haggerty, hold on, just 1 second, John. You're in first with your hand up.
Thank you. So Joanna, I really just want to thank you for all the work that you've done over the past 3 years to professionalize the office. It looks easy when you do it because you've just got so much experience in leadership and accounting in the private sector. Even though you're new to the public sector, it feels like you've been here forever. And I just looking at the slides, and I kind of knew this, but I was really just struck, the amount of transactions that occur with such a small team. It is breathtaking. So thank you, and we're lucky to have you and your team, and just let us know how we can continue to support you in your efforts to make this vital function more efficient. And I also would state that over working with you all on the budget over the past year, it is, the collector treasurer's office is one of the unsung heroes of the budgeting efforts. I mean, what you've been able to put together through, the investments and being able to collect has really helped the town navigate through some tight times, and will continue to get us there into the future as we continue to weather fiscal pressures. So thank you, and that's all for me.
Ms. McCarthy, your team does a great job. I don't know where you're gonna fit the extra employee.
No, I know. We're gonna create bunk beds or something, I don't know.
But when Ms. Dexter was here, there was talk of maybe looking into a payroll company. Is that proceeding at all?
So what we're doing, and we're working with Cody, our assistant town administrator, on this, we're putting together a request for proposal for a payroll software provider. So it wouldn't be fully outsourcing payroll. I don't think that would work. I don't think we're necessarily against it, but I do think that having a system that is supported, right, like payroll software right now is not technically supported. It's sunsetting, so we don't have a lot of support technically behind the scenes from that. I think having the software have increased functionality, so it doesn't require as much like manual input, but it can be more systematized, and that it also can connect into something that has a front-facing portal would be leaps and bounds. So I don't mean to kind of skirt the question, but I think that like what we're looking for right now is a product that will assist the efforts of the payroll and HR administration. And I think that would be enough. I'm not sure that the price point, we'd get the most bang for our buck if we went any further than that.
Thank you. I enjoy going to your office. They're very nice ladies, and I like paying the taxes. The bank's not paying them no more, so I enjoy it. So
That's often
it's very,
a trick when that happens for people, and it's great. We say congratulations. Now you're gonna forget to pay your real estate taxes.
I make sure it's there way ahead of time.
That's great.
The only thing is, like, I'll have 24 excise tax bills.
Oh, well, you have a lot of vehicles.
I know, but is there any way of just putting all the bills in one envelope? Cause there's 24, then my family's got 3 vehicles, there's
Yeah.
like
I know, you
27.
get a lot in the mail.
No, I mean, will probably be a heavy postage cost.
Yeah, I think I will look into that, but I do think we're required to mail them all individually.
Alright, thank you.
But something I am sort of thinking out there, and I'm gonna do some math on this in the next collection cycle as well. Does everybody need a return envelope? Some people use them, some
I
people
don't
don't.
need that. I
Right,
bring them back
exactly.
to you.
Yes, so we often get them back in the office,
Yeah.
so that will be one.
But you have a great staff and a
We do.
great office.
Yeah, thank you.
Just thanks for the presentation. I knew it would be great. It was
See?
exceeded. Thank you, and thanks for all that you do. Just a question on the looking ahead slide.
Yeah.
I mean, the type of question I was gonna ask here, it was about, financial opportunities, particularly around collection, and you sort of touched on it with 1 or 2 items on there, not just about collection, but just creative revenue or collection. And I was just wondering if you could say a line or two about when you talked about maximizing collections, and then separately about you capitalize on interest rate opportunities, like,
Yep.
if you could speak to sort of like the magnitude of the opportunities there.
Yeah, probably not, enough to avoid, future overrides necessary, but and my friends on the select board finance committee know this, I'm very hesitant to ever, budget or increase a budget on an interest line, like I wanna continue to be very conservative on that because we just don't have the visibility into the future interest rate environments, right? Our investment policy for the town restricts my ability to, invest in market rate securities in many respects. So what we're really talking about here is just utilizing CD rates, utilizing government bank products, government money markets, negotiated agreements with banks, particularly a bank where we have a payment lockbox. If we keep a minimum balance in that lockbox, they'll increase the rate on the money market that's attached to it, where I can transfer funds, that kind of stuff. But it does add up. I mean, I think we'll talk a little bit about the fiscal year 26 number, and you'll see that we came in well over budget, which is great. Separately, on the collection side, we have some abilities for folks who don't pay their bills in town to ensure that they ultimately do get paid. So if you do not pay your water, sewer, stormwater, or trash bills in town, they will be liened over. It's kind of a verb. People get scared of the noun word of that, but the lien, those balances overdue will be liened over into real estate tax bill the following fiscal year. So they will roll onto your tax bill, and ultimately the real estate tax bill must be paid. If you do not pay your real estate tax bill, the town can put a tax lien on your property. And that's the protection that the town has to make sure that we collect those funds, right? So that's why revenue collection isn't always gonna be straightforward. There are people that forget to make a payment, or there are people that are delinquent in payments, and acknowledging, we try to do our best to remind people to say, like, this is not a fun interest rate, you don't wanna be sitting out there with this balance. When you pay, we're gonna pay off your most overdue amounts owed to the town, so that it's in your best interest if we do that. And notices and demands are things that we can do where we're continually prompting taxpayers and reminding them that they have balances owed. Oftentimes, we do mail twice a year, you guys know this, but we collect taxes on a quarterly basis. There are oftentimes people who might forget that second coupon payment. So for instance, we just mailed your tax bills due the beginning of August and at the beginning of November, and people often pay the one in August and maybe put that bill aside and forget it in November, and they say, why didn't you email me, or why didn't you tell me? And I say, we can't, just because you missed a payment, we're not gonna notify you each and every time. So there's interest on them until they get their next bill. I just wanna think about ways that we can do reminders. I was traveling through my hometown during the prior tax billing season, and I saw like one of those flashing light signs, reminder, taxes are due. That's such a great idea. So things like that I think could be helpful, more notices and things like that, yeah. But I do think that to the extent that we can capture those interest rate opportunities and continue to do so will be helpful in cash flow planning connected with that, right? To ensure that we're making sure that we're analyzing the interest rate that we can earn on that money versus the rate that we pay in debt service, right? And I just want to be as thoughtful about that from a fiduciary standpoint moving forward as we're doing some budgeting, so I think that helps.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much for watching every penny that gets used by our town. I appreciate these sort of creative ways that you're doing that too, especially with the interest rate piece that you guys have all discussed. If you had a magic wand, what would you kind of fix immediately, or Debbie?
What would I fix? Nick's scared right now, I think.
Find some money to get better air conditioner for
Yeah, I
here.
like the air conditioner. I'm fine with that. It's blowing right on me. I would fix. I would, you know, if I had a magic wand, I would want everybody to pay their bill online. That's much easier, and it requires much less effort on everybody's part at the town in order to process those payments. And they go right into an account that makes a lot of money for the town, and you know, there's other things that I think makes sense, but I think, yeah, I guess it's that, I want you guys to pay the bills.
Interesting, thank you.
Everybody in town, everybody, listen. Yeah, but I do think, there's just unique challenges with cash, right? And we need to be, from an equity perspective, we need to be willing and able to accept cash payments. We need to be able to accept money orders and checks, and people driving up to our Dropbox and dropping it off. So we wanna be as nimble as possible. You know, something I'm thinking about is this silly penny, like, you know, the US Treasury doing it with pennies. Like, what the heck are we gonna do with, you know, change in the office, like when there's pennies? And when tax bills are, when you have to pay $1,000.23, like how are we gonna make that happen? So if, you know, I think there's little nuances of things to figure out, but yeah, I think online payments and streamlining that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Joanna. I don't really have much to add. The questions I was going to ask have kind of been surfaced throughout tax arrears as well as investment income, but I think I want to say thank you for the work you've done the last 3 years. It's been a big part of our fiscal stability. Cannot downplay how smart you've been in using the markets and the investment rates to allow us to have more revenue in a time when that comes up always, about how can we generate more revenue for the town. We'll see later when we discuss our general fund revenue, a lot of those overages are due to their ability to work in the best possible way for the town building. And so folks may not have a lot of insight into the work that you do day to day or the impact that you have, but it cannot be overstated how important you've been in your time in Milton. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
giving me the time. I appreciate it. And I'll stick around if you have any questions as you guys
Sure.
discuss.
So when the website goes down and I can't pay.
You just give us a call.
For another time.
Very helpful. Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, item 7, fiscal 2026 closeout. Mr. Milano, if you want to start.
Sure, thank you. So I will share a couple things and just talk through our preliminary results for revenue, how we closed the books out on the expense side, and a couple of action items with supplement related to appropriations transfers and a vote on revolving fund expenditure limit. So we've shared this update both with the warrant committee last night. Amy and I attended their meeting last night, and we met with the select finance committee this morning. So in terms of revenue results, this is still preliminary as we're working to close up the books, but as you can see here, we have projected about $145 million in revenue, and through the end of fiscal 26, which ended on June 30th, we collected $149.5 million, so approximately $4.2 million over budget. A couple of the places where we were significantly over budget were motor vehicle excise tax, which is a place where we've seen higher than kind of the 5 to 7 year historical average would tell you we would expect to land. And we did increase the motor vehicle excise tax forecast for fiscal '27, our upcoming year to $5 million. So I've captured a bit of that in our planning for fiscal '27. Penalties and interest were $678,000 over budget, as the treasurer collector just noted, largely due to continued work on collections on longer outstanding tax accounts and tax bills. So the revenue from real estate taxes would be reported on the real estate property tax line, but any penalties and interest that was charged by the town on that delinquent tax bill would be collected and held under the penalty and interest line. So as those longer outstanding tax title issues are closed out, we wouldn't expect to generate as much revenue here in future years. The other one I'll flag is licenses and permits, which is largely building permit fee revenue, $950,000 over budget. I'll just note that there are 3 permits that contributed close to $780,000, so 3 large permits for larger projects. Significantly swing our permit fee revenue all over budget. It just goes to show that again, this is not necessarily, it's not one-time revenue because we've got a couple of busy years in the building department, but it's also not necessarily recurring revenue that we can count on bringing in $2.4 million in revenue in building permits in fiscal '29 as an example. Since these larger projects have been permitted, in this year we would expect to potentially issue building permits for the memory care project on Highland. That building permit application is in, and 648, 652 Canton Ave is a 116-unit project that potentially could have received approvals to proceed this year, so that might be another place where would be a large permit fee. There's a building permit for the 40B on Access Road 720 Randolph Ave. They've already got a partial permit but haven't paid the full permit fee. So there are a couple of larger ones for fiscal '27, but that would wrap the large projects that have been approved regulatory-wise in the town the last couple of years. And so our longer-term outlook for a building permit wouldn't be as high. And then lastly, again, just kind of building out the conversation we just had, investment income, which is really interest income on the town's earnings, $983,000 over the budget. Is again, it's not necessarily been one time because we've been in receiving strong returns on our interest rates in the last couple of years. However, again, if the broader economic conditions change and interest rates drop, then we would be in a position to not necessarily be able to bring them back in the money. So we feel comfortable keeping those revenue estimates relatively conservative. So again, bottom line is about $4.2 million above what had been budgeted in fiscal '26, subject to kind of continued closeout on fiscal. Questions on the revenue side?
Questions and closeouts?
I can go through the expense side of the transfers. So we have, what we'll talk about next is first, transfers related to snow and ice deficit to close out our deficit in snow and ice, and then a description of the broader appropriations transfers for the various departmental budgets, and all this information is in the supplement packet. The reserve fund is appropriated as part of the operating budget on an annual basis. It's held by the warrant committee. Transfers out of it are subject to approval of the warrant committee, I should say. Warrant committee has approved transfers out of the reserve fund of the entire reserve fund as displayed on the screen. $277,000 went to the snow and ice deficit in DPW. $500 was for the audit budget, just a miscalculation of what the fee was going to be, and then a similar miscalculation on the retirement system appropriations for $4,500 too. So the entire reserve fund has been transferred out of the reserve fund into other budgets. For the rest of the snow and ice deficit, this is a summary that just shows for fiscal '26 we appropriated $160,000 but spent $1.65 million on snow operations, salts, contractors, etc. We're leaving a deficit within the DPW budget of $1.49 million, and the transfers down below demonstrate how that deficit was addressed or is proposed, I should say, proposed to be addressed through additional transfers. So the first one is the reserve fund, $277,000 that we just described. The second is the DPW budget itself had savings in other accounts that weren't the snow and ice account. Throughout the year, there were, I would say, average between 6 to 7 vacancies in their frontline operational staff. Our town engineer position was also vacant for 6 months, so there were vacancies within the department that contributed to savings on their overall budget, as well as underspending in other accounts, in solid waste, in some of the general expense lines. They did not spend all of the money elsewhere, so the DPW budget was able to absorb some of that impact in snow and ice. And then 4 additional transfers from proposed from departments to DPW select board. Again, in our office with vacancies in the planning director position, the assistant planning director position, the assistant town administrator position for much of the fiscal year. So we had significant savings in our budget that was able to be proposed and transferred to DPW. Legal budget similar, underspent in legal, so we can move that over to DPW. Our general insurance line, our premiums were just lower than we had expected them to be. And this is a budget account for the current new fiscal year where we have dropped that budget year over year just to reset it up to adjust to lower than expected premiums, particularly around workers' compensation. Then lastly, we had $282,000 in debt service account that we did not spend due to a change in our game plan around when we were going to issue long-term debt. That is coming up for later this year, as the treasurer mentioned. So overall, the snow and ice deficit has been absorbed by these transfers that we propose that are included in the agenda for approval. Despite, working to absorb this deficit, we also have another $1.6 to $1.8 million in other departmental budgets that were also underspent. So we have had, a good year in the sense that we still have significant term backs throughout the town budget beyond just these ones we identified. They're largely due to vacancies in the police department, vacancies in the fire department. And then because we did not settle the collective bargaining agreements, there's $590,000 appropriated for payments related to the collective bargaining agreements. Since we didn't settle any of it, all of that goes unspent. So that contributes to an additional term back. So that's snow and ice in the reserve fund. And then again, I had passed out and included the other appropriations transfers. These appropriations transfers that are listed and included in the packet are moving money from within departmental budgets. So we're constrained to the budget that's voted by town meeting for every line that's voted by town meeting. So to move money from salaries and wages to general expenses requires an appropriations transfer approved by the warrant committee and the select board. The balance of these transfers are already within departmental budgets, just moving from one line to another. Happy to take any questions if there are any specific ones, but otherwise that's where the closeout stands for fiscal 26. And then lastly, the other request we're making is related to increasing revolving fund expenditure limits. And as included in the packet, we have a revolving fund for the East Milton Library, and they're having issues with their sewer line. They contracted to replace the sewer line. We had issues locating the sewer line, ran into rock as well, and became a pretty intensive project. But at the end of the day, we replaced the sewer line entirely. While the trench was open, we replaced the water line. It just became a much more expensive project, so it ended up being $50,000 over 3 days of work. The Milton Arts Center paid $12,000 of that expense, and the Milton in the revolving fund cleared the rest of the expense, $38,000, against their annual spending limit of $25,000. So the revolving fund, just after these expenditures, has a year-end balance of $127,000. And I'll just note that all of these payments from the Milton Arts Center go into this revolving fund, and it's explicitly set up for maintaining the building, making repairs to the building. So it's a big expense. It was a big project that took place early last fall. However, now we have a new water line, new sewer line that should last as long as most of us are around, and the money that we use to pay for it is meant to make improvements and investments in the county infrastructure of that facility. So that's the appropriations transfers, the reserve fund, the revenue, happy to take any questions.
We talked about this morning at the finance committee meeting, so Megan and I have seen a lot of this, but any questions from the board on any of the numbers, the appropriations transfers?
This might be off topic a little bit, but can you remind me what we budgeted for snow and ice in FY 27?
We increased the appropriation fiscal 27 budget is budgeted at $250,000. It's a $90,000 increase, which is the first increase in many years, but it's still kind of well below where a cold winter will land us, but it's an increase over
If there are no other questions, I will accept the motion on the appropriation transfers and the expenditure limit for this library.
Move to approve the appropriation transfers as submitted by the finance director and approve FY 2026 expenditure limit for the East Milton Library revolving fund of $38,000.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call votes. Member Hagerty.
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll.
Yes.
Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Mr. Lemon.
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item 9, the select board goals and objectives. I will just surface this right now for any discussions on points we'd like to have added or anything we saw in what was shared that we would like to have changed in it and have it for approval in our next meeting next Tuesday. So, any points? We'll still have another few days for anyone to sort of review and ask questions, and at our next meeting we'll move for approval. Thank you. We'll now move to item 10, library college acquisition and review. Maybe best for us to start here, Mr. Long, any updates you'd like to share since our last conversation?
Just a few points that we've communicated with the we've had a conversation with President of Curry College, been in touch with the broker and the attorney for Labouré, continuing to reiterate the town's interest, the town's commitment to making an offer. They've said that they're looking for offers by the end of the month. I've checked in with the Landvest, the firm that's conducting the appraisal of Labouré. They said they expect to deliver the appraisal between July 24th and July 28th. So we'll have that to review and consider prior to making an offer. I'll note that we have conveyed that if, Labouré receives an offer, or is interested in an offer, that the town stands willing to match or beat something that they've gotten as a, just kind of initial, just to convey that we certainly want to be at the table. And their understanding of our timeline, and at the time is interested. The school building committee is meeting on Monday, July 20th, to pick up the conversation around the site and the building in terms of how it lends itself to the school project. And so, July 20th will be their next discussion with the architect and the team around the school project concept. And we'll be sure to share that information as we get it as well. I think those are the two main updates. So the appraisal is in progress, expected to deliver later this month. The school building committee work is continuing as well.
And so for us, with the calendar on our appraisal of Landvest being expected at the end of the month, we may need to have a special meeting for ourselves the last week of July for us to either review and discuss our next step forward to, that being the last week where we think about making our offer, depending on what's happened in the subsequent weeks. So I think hopefully we'll get it before 30th. We're leaving the country. So if it happens before then. Monday, the architects are to the school building committee, and I believe Tuesday they'll be presenting to the school committee. So we will have at least, hopefully by the end of the month, our appraisal school buildings plan presented to both of those bodies, and it'll give us a much better idea of how we can move forward with this project with Rapparay. I will just reiterate what Ms. Milano said. We have made it expressly clear to the folks at Rapparay that we are very interested in the property and we want every opportunity for the purchase. So there we made, it's very clear, no one's about it, we would like to stay in the town's purview. So, anything else kind of comes with me, thoughts from the members?
Just on my understanding of the school building committee dates, I think I'm just raising it in case there's any, acceleration we wanna impress, but I'm not sure there is. Based on the meeting on, what was the last meeting, on the 6th, with the architect and the school building committee, they overviewed sort of the timeline of the deliverables. And there's a meeting on the 20th for the school building committee, so this upcoming Monday, where there's gonna be a draft report surface of school building committee without, I think, pricing attached to it yet. I think around that time it's going out to the pricing estimator too. The architect indicated a final report with pricing to the school building committee the week of the 27th. So, and then they were planning on a presentation to the select board on August 3rd. So it's probably the best we can do, but hopefully we can get our hands on that report last week in July and just kind of impress on the timing. I mean, I think we're trying to be nimble either way, no matter what we have from the school building committee at that point, but it just would be a shame if it came 2 days after we have to make the call. So, maybe Nick, we can try to just kind of press a couple days this way or that on the timing of all that.
I think with that timetable in mind, we have to have a meeting on the 4th.
Yes, we had already planned on meeting on the 4th, which is the question of maybe adding a meeting the 29th or the 28th or the 30th as well. Once the appraisal is back and knowing what other information is less. And at the same time, we will follow up with the broker and it's gonna have just to provide them an update and just clarify what expectations are in terms of fund time. If they're if they're okay with a week later, a week and a half later, maybe that gives us a little bit more wiggle room, and like I said, they've been good partners so far.
Other thoughts?
Objective A is to just do everything we need to do to put ourselves in the position to handle the rest of the month properly. I think we are. Thinking past that, it's kind of a point I've been making in prior meetings, but I would be in favor of, continuing to plan beyond that if things go our way with the bid. I'm thinking in terms of almost like a 2.0 of the roadmap document we've been working on to date, which kind of set forth, what the school committee would be doing, what the school building committee would be doing, what the select board would be doing. I think, there's probably, we might be coming up on kind of a need to kind of enhance that or update that a little bit to kind of take us through, just so everyone is kind of clear on continuing to, move. I'll give you 2 examples, and I don't know if they end up if we do a 2.0, if this all needs to be in there, but starting with the school analysis, we heard from the superintendent and select school committee chair last meeting that there's a few items from their deliverable that they need more time on, and it makes sense to me that they do. It was sort of the whole qualitative feedback to us around, you know, how this option really compares to MSBA option. You know, once they kind of see the deliverable and pricing and all that. I just want to kind of keep that rolling so that we know kind of, I have no doubt they'll be on top of that, but I think it helps just from a coordination and transparency perspective, like, so we know, okay, that work will continue, is it in August, September? I don't know, and then I again, we've been over this a little bit, but I think we could start to map out what we were talking about with the planning board last meeting, around that other use diligence. I think it could make sense to think about where do you wanna be with that by October town meeting? I don't expect it to be done, but do you wanna start to map that out? I think there could be value in just moving with some of the planning while we are, you know, I think time will be of the essence in sort of each phase here. I think if we're fortunate enough for you know, our bid to be accepted contingently, then that's gonna be another tight window, you know, between then and town meeting. I think October sadly will kind of sneak up. So I would be in for just trying to kind of keep, you know, evolving that roadmap document. And I'd be happy to help in any way with that, but just wanted to put that out there from like a planning perspective.
What are you thinking about seeing on the roadmap transformation?
Off the top of my head, I probably wouldn't add too much to the option, you know, what we were referring to last meeting in the option A scenario, other than just clarifying the understanding of like when those other school committee deliverables will be coming back to us. So I might just try to, you know, almost us speaking to the school committee, to each other about aligning on expectations of when that sort of critical work will be happening. I would think about enhancing the Plan B planning to think about, so if we go down the path where we were talking with the planning board last meeting, you know, I think it was, you know, it might have been a combination of Sean and Cheryl who said that they would probably, you know, the town would probably need to leverage an outside consultant to really work up, you know, a framework around potential, you know, use options if it weren't a school. So I would be in favor of scoping out almost, you know, identifying sort of who's gonna be working on that, who do we have sort of between the boards or staff to sort of be thinking about that, pursuing that. I wouldn't suggest hiring a consultant until we know we wanna spend the money, i.e. get the property, you know, or, you know, our bids accepted. But, you know, I think the document could say, for example, spend August and September doing X, moving that along. So that there's a little framework around that thinking to kind of guide the town meeting discussion. I think it's a delicate balance of like distracting from focusing on the school effort and, you know, making sure our bid goes in smoothly. But I think we probably wanna utilize, you know, week to week here. Just one more, I'm almost envisioning like, just as an example and to be refined, like a task force with a few select board members and a few planning board members and the town administrator and town planner to almost, you know, start, you know, thinking through that option, sharing expertise. Perhaps that's the group that oversees the consultant, if we bring one in, to sort of be reporting into us. And, you know, we were talking a little bit last meeting about if someone else gets the property, we wanna sort of be nimble to react to that too. And that might position you to already kind of have the room of experts to be there to think about that too. So I guess part of it is just having that right forum available for the right people to keep talking about this. I'm on the side of trying to like structure that a little bit, but if you guys think, you know, that can just happen more organically outside of that structure, you know, open to that too. But that's sort of the best I can kind of think about how to move it along.
And I'll just say, I think the options outside of the school are just a much longer process. Whereas if we are working with the schools and the school building committee, which is what I think we're trying to find in the next 2 months, right? Whether it's our bid at the end of the month and all of the reports that are coming in so that we have more information. I think that being our plan A and that coming in, if and when those items come back from the architect for school building, from our appraisal and all the other pieces, and we say, yes, this is the idea, that we should go ahead. I think it lessens the need for the plan B, in that we're focused on the school's work. And we're gonna have to go to town meeting in sections anyway, whereas the fall town meeting is just for the library purchase, regardless of use. Perhaps with the story and the plan for how it would work with the schools. I'm trying to think of when it would trigger us having a separate body that's working on a different idea. And I'm not trying to say that it's a bad idea, it's just like, when would we pull that group together as we're trying to kind of figure out the school idea as well as with the purchase. Now, if we get the stuff back from the schools and it doesn't seem like it's going to work, then I think that automatically triggers us thinking about that's that secondary piece. So maybe it's just at the end of the month, when we go through some of these reports, we start thinking about, is this really feasible? Because right now, I think we're still operating a little bit in the dark in terms of, we don't know what stuff's gonna cost, we don't know the designs, you know, the schools are working in best efforts, but what if their report goes back and says, it's not exactly how we thought it would be? And maybe I think, which I think the trigger points of where we would then say, okay, let's start with the secondary plan B piece. So maybe that's something for us to get into in July, maybe on August 4th meeting, where we have more of the information. That's fine.
I mean, I think that's fair, you know, a couple weeks here and there. I think we, you know, don't need to exhaust A before starting B, but I think we will have a few more data points later this month to help us probably think about the scope of B for sure, you know. I'm not expecting that, based on the enthusiasm of the architects, to be, you know, a dead on arrival kind of report back. But, you know, who knows once we start attaching pricing to it. But.
All right, other thoughts from the members? All right, let's move to item 11, special election and state ballot questions, which I think is less important to us now, except for Atherton. I believe the fire station building committee is still working towards their goals, but we've already kind of seem to be leaning towards a special election for if things go well that way.
I don't have anything to add at this time, I just will continue to track this for the next 2 meetings in case the board decides to add a question to the November ballot. And again, that deadline is to have that delivered to the Secretary of State's office, in hard copy, by the end of the day on August 5th. So we have a firm deadline to put a ballot question on the November ballot, which is that August 5th date.
Great, let's go to item 12, discussion approval of potential articles. Mr. Milan, just walk us through any updates on the articles.
Yes, a lot of these are in draft form, so we'll have a few more drafts teed up for potential approval at the meeting next week. The warrant committee is certainly antsy to get articles sooner rather than later, as their timeline to turn around recommendations and comments really lands them in the first or second week of September to be done with their work. So we're looking at a very truncated timeline as we come towards October town meeting. I'll just note that of the articles on the list, A, library college acquisition and appropriation, and C, school building committee appropriation are kind of tied together. If we're gonna acquire a library and we need money to study it, you know, that we need an article for that, and we potentially need an article for the school building committee, so that will be kind of up in the air for a while. As the chair mentioned, the fire station building committee is anticipating meeting the 21st of July or 28th of July to map out where they'll be in time for October, and kind of their game plan on when their timing will be for requesting the appropriation and being ready to make that request. The appropriation for water main replacements is a DPW engineering project. We're just working through the financing of that in a little bit more detail, so we'll be prepared to speak to that directly on next Tuesday. Short-term rentals, the planning board met and discussed it at their meeting last week. They're continuing to work on it. Another draft was just distributed by the planning director earlier this evening for that comment that starts to flag the planning board member comments for work internally. So we're continuing to work on that. Again, just worried generally about some of these timelines to get complete articles to the warrant committee, but their next meeting will be the 23rd. So we'll have something or not by August 4th, which I would view really as kind of our deadline to get any really significant articles to the warrant committee. And then the two after that, the local option, room occupancy, and the community impact fee are tied to the short-term rentals, so those are a little bit more straightforward. And if we're not moving forward with the short-term rental bylaw right now, we can probably make that notice. We have some finance housekeeping related surplus bond proceeds that we will present next Tuesday. And then lastly, not on the list, the Community Preservation Committee is potentially going to submit an article related to the Tucker Playground project, which has been under progress. They're meeting on July 20th to consider bringing a project out of their normal scheduled routine to the fall town meeting to try to tee that project up for as much construction next summer as possible. And then if, assuming Atherton is moving forward, the CPC has also been asked to make an appropriation to the Atherton project for the historical components of that project. And then lastly, we have a warrant article from the local historic district study committee, which we talked about in our last meeting. And I'll be working with the chair of that committee to have him attend one of our select board meetings to talk about that article and where it stands in the request to include it on the fall town meeting. So that's the status on each of those. More clarity and more complete drafts by next Tuesday, and then I would view August 4th as our headline, our hard deadline to get all these items to the warrant.
So no motions for us on this. We'll have drafts for next Tuesday's meeting, and motions made to move forward is next Tuesday, the 4th. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, move to item 13. License agreement with Coastal Ambulance for use of the garage and land in the DPW yard for temporary ambulance storage and crew quarters. I believe this is related to Coastal having to leave their current residence under Steel and Rye and them leasing with us until September 30th. Then at which point we'll figure out what happens with Coastal from that point. But any thoughts or questions from the members or anything you'd like to add, Mr.
No, the license agreement has been updated with a monthly payment of $7,300 for the short-term duration that supposed to be down there. They've got their trailer on there now, and located at DPW. So they have been, their lease has been ended at their prior location in Steel and Rye. They're continuing to search for a new long-term option in Milton. We are willing to license some space with the approval of the DPW director who's been involved from the get-go, that this does not affect their operations. Where it would affect operations is once we get into the winter months, which is the reason for the September 30th deadline on the license agreement. However, he's indicated that probably keeping them there until October is possible, so we may look to extend it, but right now we're thinking keeping the September 30th date for now, look to extend it potentially to October 31st and assist them in a continued search around town. And as I mentioned to the board, they were attendees at the walkthrough at the East Milton Fire Station site visit that was held earlier this month.
Thoughts?
Nick, where's the options in town?
They are striking out, and they've been
There
looking
is
for a
none.
while. Yes, correct. So town facilities, if there's town facilities or if there's other land in town that we might be willing to put up, that's kind of where they've returned to after exploring a lot of different, or trying to explore different private options. They expanded a lot in recent years, and they're landed in communities that have a lot more options for them. It's just a bit tougher in those things.
I just don't see options other than firehouse. But there's no room there for them for the duration? That's not a bad,
We're gonna play this we're doing this for a couple months, see how it goes, see how everybody plays along together, and if it works out. There's always the option to continue to extend it, if it's not interrupting, if there's no interruption to operations. Generally speaking, we certainly would want them more centrally located in town than even where they were before, or at the East Milton Station if they end up being bid on that site. So in this general vicinity is a good place to be. So we'll have to see how it shapes out and continues from here.
Megan Haggerty.
Just a real quick question. What are the minimum requirements for the space that they need?
They do need the ambulances under the state agency OEMS they do need to be garaged, so they need physical shelter for the ambulances themselves, and then they need crew quarters for 4 employees who work 24-hour shifts.
Okay.
Right, we'll stay in touch with Coastal. Let's move to item
I
14.
do need a motion.
Okay, motion, I'm sorry, yes. I'll take a motion to approve.
Move to approve license agreement with Coastal Ambulance for use of a garage and land in DPW yard for temporary ambulance storage and crew quarters until September 30th, 2026, and authorize the town administrator to extend the license agreement with the approval of the Department of Public Works.
second,
Motion made and seconded. Member Haggerty.
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll.
yes,
Mr. Overshaw.
Yes.
Mr. Hunter.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Move to item 14, discussion approval of the pilot payment from Curry College.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Curry College submitted a pilot payment earlier this fiscal year of $110,000 in keeping with their past pilot payments. And so, as always, we appreciate that contribution to the town. We appreciate their continued partnership.
Thank you, Curry. Thoughts, questions? If none, I'll take a motion.
Move to approve the pilot payment from Curry College.
second,
Motion made and seconded. Member Haggerty.
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll.
yes,
Mr. Overshaw.
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, moving to the pilot payment from Milton Academy. Oh, it sends us a nice envelope.
Yes, Milton County submitted a letter of transmittal, which I included in the package that shows what their payments were and contributions were to the town, general fund, as well as a few other departments and their historical. So they contributed $245,000 into pilot payments to the general fund, as well as $12,500 to police and fire each, and the Wildcat then $7,500 into the Milton Library, $7,500. So annual contributions in fiscal 26 to $285,000, which is a $10,000 increase over the prior year. I'll just note that Heidi Van Brown, who was been the CFO at Milton Academy for at least as long as I've been in Milton, is moving on. So we will need a new contact moving forward with the academy to make sure that we stay on their radar related to these payments. That has been the topic of the last couple of years.
Make a motion to approve, oh, I'm sorry, anybody wanna say anything?
I think you're good, John, keep going.
Make a motion to approve the pilot payment from Milton Academy.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, Member Hagerty,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes,
Mr. Obashamber,
Yes.
Ms. Nolan.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Right, item 16, letter to the commission on pilot for state-owned land and regarding potential changes to this pilot program. The letter, as you all see drafted here, regarding the state potentially changing some of the pilot calculations which would directly affect the state of Vermont.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna recuse myself from this discussion to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest. My employer has state-owned land in the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we gotta get it back.
No, it's-
Send her a text and call. All right.
I'll kick it to Cody.
Alright.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you members see, there's a letter that we have drafted to the commission, which was established last year. For background, this has been an ongoing issue that the state has considered, largely because communities in western and central Massachusetts feel that they are largely left out from the benefits of the pilot program. Milton receives the fourth most funding of any community in the state through the state-owned pilot program. I will spare the details of the calculation that goes into that, but Milton certainly benefits because of the land within the Blue Hills Reservation and the calculation that places significant value on state-owned land in Milton to the tune of $1.578 million this year. And that represents about 2.8% of the total state appropriation. So as you can imagine, any fluctuation or recalibration of the calculations that the state uses to distribute those funds would affect Milton significantly one way or the other. So if the program's appropriation would grow, Milton would benefit under this current program. However, if this commission recommends certain policy changes to the program that redistributed money under the program rather than expand the pool of money, Milton could be negatively impacted. So the letter essentially encourages the commission to consider reforms that expand that pool of money as opposed to redistributing those funds across different communities and potentially pushing them from one community to the next. I would also just add that this is consistent with several reports from the state auditor, which has called for a hold harmless provision with any policy change to ensure that communities have consistency going forward. So I think this letter is a good opportunity for us to emphasize the value of this revenue to Milton, given the significant impacts of state land to Milton and obviously the benefits that happy to take any questions.
Cody, any questions? In your email to us, I think you said we're number 4 in the state in pilot payments from the state. So that's a massive change for us. Potentially.
Yes, oh yeah, it could be, yes, it could be a change depending on what the commission recommends and what the state were to do. And I'll just note that the members of the commission and the directive of the commission are specifically to study the impacts and equity across Massachusetts, and the members that are on the commission are largely Western Mass and Central Mass representatives. I don't know that there's any Eastern Mass representatives on there, so it's definitely teed up to recommend changes. We just want to make sure that they hear from us as well as they do.
I think we're definitely at risk here if the pot stays the same. But I think the letter's fantastic. I think you did a real nice job with it, Cody. I think there's some good substance to it. You know, I don't have any comments to the letter. I think you did a real nice job.
Thank you, everyone. I'll take a motion.
Move to approve the comment letter to the commission on payment in lieu of taxes for state-owned land and authorize the chair to sign the letter on the board's behalf.
Second,
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Driscoll.
yes.
Mr. Roboshama.
Yes.
Ms. Nolan.
Yes.
Myself, yes. I'm just telling Megan to come back. All right, we move to our committee reports, and Member Hagerty, back just in time, since the first two committees, you are the chair of, so I'll take us there.
Yeah, so for Select Board Finance Committee, I think Town Administrator Milano pretty much covered what we discussed recently. But for the Budget Coordination Committee, we are gearing up to initiate the budget planning process for fiscal 28 in August, which is going to be earlier than we've typically started the process at the suggestion of a few members of the group in order to get a proposed budget submitted to the warrant committee earlier. It's just part of our improvements to making the budget process work more smoothly. So these are all good changes, and we look forward to more activities starting up in August.
School Building Committee.
Just another line, I mean, we largely talked about the recent meeting, which was pretty substantive with the architect on July 6th. Really impressive firm. They met with us, the school building committee, after, I think that morning they met with Superintendent Phelan and Bernadette Butler and Sean O'Rourke to sort of learn more about sort of the space needs and sort of think about planning future space needs. We talked, one thing I just wanted to, I mean, just a couple things that stuck out to me from their sort of update after they've done their site walk, basically, of the property. They were really pleased with the structure of the building, you know, of the building, the classroom, you know, building C or whatever that's called. You know, so some real, you know, promising findings as they're starting to sort of look at the viability of that building. We did talk a little bit about, like, what are you reviewing, you know, in the timeline that you have, and what is for consideration at a later date as you kind of really nail down, you know, what the cost of a building, you know, school building there would cost, and, you know, are there any sort of, I think they use the word like hiccups to kind of come across, like what hiccups are we kind of identifying, ruling out now versus later. You know, so they kind of reinforced their satisfaction so far with their looking at structurally. They did say, you know, there would be, I think, a deeper structural review, you know, at a later phase. You know, you look at traffic later, engage the community later. The big tree situated on the property which is, I think, you know, important to the neighborhood, let's just say, would be the location of a potential addition to school. So there's, you know, we're just kind of talking about, like, what are we getting from you this month and what is for consideration, you know, that has to keep happening. So, you know, that was helpful. I think their deliverable to us this month will be, include some different scenarios, which I think will be helpful, like one with, you know, trying to fit the classrooms in the building as is, and one with an addition. So I think hopefully that provides some pricing optionality, just to, you know, keep educating us, but really helpful meeting, so.
And John, for the Housing Trust.
Nothing new to report on the housing trust. Just the last time we met was the last week of June, first week of July, and we awarded some money to Miller Ave. We haven't met since, unless they threw me off the committee, I don't know. They were reorganizing, so I might not have made the new one.
downsized. Alright, thank you all. The next few are motions for committees. If there are no questions or issues, I think it's best for us to take it as a single motion.
I agree.
Okay, take the motion.
Move to approve the board and committee reappointments as they appear on the meeting agenda.
Second,
Motion made and seconded. Member Hagan,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
yes,
Mr. Obersheimer,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Alright, that will bring us to item 19, one-day liquor license, Historic New England Eustace Estate. I'll take a motion. Or any questions?
Move to approve the one-day liquor license Historic New England Eustace Estate located on 1424 Canton Avenue for October 17th, 2026 from 7 to 10 p.m. in the Victorian Spiritualism, for the Victorian Spiritualism Party in the mansion.
Victorian spiritualism.
You will have to attend to find out.
Okay, motion made
second,
and seconded. Member Hagerty,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
yes,
Mr. Obersheimer,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
and myself, yes, and then I have to go. Victorian spiritualism. So that sounds like what's the definition? We've gone too far.
Bridgerton?
Bridgerton, here we go. There it is, alright.
It's different.
Isn't it? Alright. Item 20. Application of use of the town green in Baron Hugo gazebo. Take a motion if there are any questions.
make a motion to, accept the application to use the town green and Baron Hugo gazebo on Sunday, September 20th, 2026, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. for International Overdose Awareness Day, sponsored by Milton Coalition.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Member Hagerty,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes,
Mr. Obersheimer,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
For myself, yes. Right, moving to item 21, application to use the town green gazebo on Sunday for back business. I'll take a motion.
Move to approve the application to use Manning Park East Milton Deck on Friday, September 4th, 2026, from 4 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. for the Back to Business event sponsored by the Milton Arts Center and the Milton Chamber of Commerce.
second,
Motion made, seconded. Member Hagerty,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
yes,
Mr. Obersheimer,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Right, moving right along to item 22, application for common victrola license.
make an approval application for a common victorial license Hook Pizza Company located at 538 Adam Street, Milton, Mass.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Megan Hagerty,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes,
Mr. Obersheimer,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Item 23, meeting minutes, June 9th and June 17th. Take a motion.
Move to approve the meeting minutes dated June 9th and June 17th, 2026.
second,
I don't think you second the 17th, Mr. Driscoll.
Oh, okay, I could do them separately, okay. Move to approve the meeting minutes dated June 9th, 2026.
second,
Motion made, seconded. Megan Hagerty,
Yes.
John Driscoll,
yes,
Peter Obersheimer,
Yes.
Megan Nolan.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Keep going.
And then move to approve the meeting minutes dated June 17th, 2026.
second,
Alright, made and seconded. Megan Hagerty. Didn't hear you.
Yes.
Alright, Mr. Obersheimer.
yes,
Nope, you missed
Oh.
this one, John. Mr. Obersheimer,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Alright, brings us to the town administrator report. Nick, keeps going.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking of the Eustace Estate, I was invited up last week to visit and see the work that they've been doing with CPC funds. I joined Tom Allen and Pete Jackson for both a tour and a very, very, very deep dive into masonry practices, and mortar and stonework. So, I've learned a thing or two, but I appreciate the time to go up there, and I learned, and I did not notice, I don't know how I didn't notice, that the front building that abuts Canton Ave has offices, and some of the employees of the historic New England work out at that building, so, I had no idea about that, so appreciate the opportunity to see the entire state, see the house, and visit. Declan Ware started on the week before July 4th, so I'm forgetting the specific date, as the new director of veteran services for the Randolph Mountain Veterans District. Declan was previously in that same position in the town of Whitman, so he's been here, he's been right at work, getting stuff done in terms of veterans who receive benefits through the town, as well as VA benefits and claims, our hometown heroes program. So he's dived right in, he's fit right in. So we appreciate and welcome Declan to Milton. He'll be working in Milton on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as has been the custom out of the Council on Aging, and then the balance of his time is spent we posted about it shortly before the July 4th holiday, but thanks to DPW for planting, joining what has been a bit of a trend of planting a commemorative tree for the 250th. So that tree is now located outside on the town green, closest to town hall, an elm tree in recognition of the original Liberty trees, and we'll work on a commemorative plaque to go along with it. So DPW team is excited to participate and running with that one. In addition, the stage on the deck in East Milton is built, so if you haven't seen it, it fits nicely into the landscaping there. Just a small structure that came together in the course of a few days, so appreciate D&D Construction for pulling that off. And again, funded 100% by the state budget earmarks and incurred by Representative Wells. Lastly, a new police officer, Emily Hardeman, started a couple weeks ago with the town. She previously was a cadet with us, went to transit police, and has returned. And is now a police officer, so is undergoing some field training. But unlike normal hires where they're hired and they go into the academy and extensive training, she's already at that point. So we expect her to be able to work individually much sooner than another officer that goes through the review process might. In addition to that, 3 new firefighters are slated to start, I believe, later this week before heading to the academy at the beginning of August. We'll share an update on that next week. And lastly, as Joanna had mentioned, we go to next starting as well, so starting to fill some of these vacant positions that we have across various departments. That's it from my Mr. Chair.
All right, chair's report, not much. We haven't met since the holiday, I don't. So I want to thank everyone for East Milton Landing and the 250 signs and all of the decorations that are up there. I think that's a combination of citizens as well as DPW workers. So much appreciated from everyone for their work. Also, Milton Music Fest, which I think is now run by We Are Milton, held their annual event on the Hill, which I know was really well received. I was not able to attend, but again, thank you for everyone that works to continue with our traditions in town. Still not really sure why we have archery thing set up there right now, but we'll figure that out. Those two are for me, and I will just then move into the members. Anything folks would like to report or share?
Yeah, I wanna thank Lynn, the DPW, and your office for decorating that deck. I got a lot of phone calls, and I tried to tell them I had nothing to do with it. After the third one, I just took the credit. But it was greatly well decorated, and a lot of people appreciated that. And I don't know, like 5 weeks ago, me and my wife went out to dinner Friday night. We're up on Randolph Ave, going, creeping along. The people using those turning lanes up past Hillside Street, going to the light, going towards Randolph. I mean, one after another. I did call 1212, and the cadet was very nice. But they gotta watch that, Nick.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They're going right up the middle. And they're cutting right in when the light's green.
Yeah. Okay.
You
No, that's
know?
good feedback, and it's feedback we can share with MassDOT as well in terms of any engineering options that they might have. But I'll share that with the chief in terms of just continued enforcement there.
Yeah, thank you.
Others and members?
Nothing for me.
Megan Haggerty?
Nothing from me.
Oh, but we got one up on the T, we got their police officer, trained.
Exactly. Better job here.
Public comment response, I wanna open this up for anyone else that would like to share something as well from the firefighters that came in. I will just say, we are limited in what we can say, around collective bargaining, but our firefighters are heard. We are dedicated to not only public safety, but also, good compensation of public safety workers. Negotiations are never easy, and we are also very, encouraged that we will end in a good space with our firefighters and others when this come up. But thank you, not only for their work, but for coming in, tonight. I have friends in the fire service, not here, but in other spaces. I also have friends who have passed from occupational cancer, so I do hear and understand what our firefighters are saying. So anything else from the members would like to add?
I just wanna echo that a little bit. I wanna thank Joe Byron and the other firefighters who not only showed up tonight, but for the work that the whole team does for the town. It's seen and, you know, we heard you tonight, so.
Yeah, and I'll just double down on that, triple down on it. I appreciate the firefighters coming in this evening, and it really shows their dedication and
And I agree with all of you.
All right, future meeting schedule, next Tuesday, and then Tuesday, August 4th. I don't think I'd be able to make any other Tuesdays in August, so we have to scrap the 18th and then be back on the 8th. But one also tentatively will be the last week of July, depending on if we get these reports back for us just to meet and discuss the reports. So last week of July, 27th through 29th. Future agenda items for anyone?
I think we have to get, traffic subcommittee on the agenda. I mean, looking at our goals, goal 3.2 is draft and adopt a charge and composition for, you know, blah, 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 to oversee the implementation of, you know, the tool design study. That work is kicking off. So I think, time just to kind of finalize how that work is gonna be overseen from a committee perspective. You know, should probably be on the agenda next week if we can get it. You know I've been trying to move the ball on that, and had really good conversation with, you know, different potential stakeholders in town about how that could look, you know, from Nick to Liz Manning to Tom McCarthy to, who am I forgetting? But, so I think we can maybe just try to finalize our thinking on that. I don't know, Nick, I don't wanna put you on the spot, but do you think that we could be ready to kind of talk about that in next week's meeting?
Sure, yeah, definitely. I think we can distribute something by the end of the week.
Okay.
Tee it up for a conversation.
Works, anything from others, future agenda items?
The only other one I was thinking of is if we've, at some point, we may wanna think about if we've had like any updates from MassDOT in terms of follow-up on thinking about how they might be able to help think about Canton Ave calming measures. You know, I know that was sort of an action item from May. So maybe we might be coming up on that soon, one of these upcoming meetings, if we've heard anything from them or if there's anything we can help with.
Alright, that's great. So with that, I'll move to enter executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, Library College, 303 Adams Street, based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the select board. The select board will not return to open session. I'll also move to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, Milton Clerical Unit of the Southeastern Public Employees Association, Milton Professional Management Association, Milton Public Employee Association, Milton Firefighters Local 1116, Milton Police Association, Milton Superior Officers, Milton Library Association, based on the belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the select board. The select board will not return to open session. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, you need,
Nope.
A second and a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, David seconded.
Second,
Hey, seconded. Member Hagan,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
yes.
Mr. Olshammer.
Yes.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Now we can do it. Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Made and seconded. Member Hagan,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
yes.
Mr. Olshammer.
Yes.
Yes.
And myself, yes.